the Coffee Trail. So 27.8 kilometres of racing, just 97 metres of climbing, majoritively in the form of bridges. It's always dangerous making a prediction, but I'm going early. I'm predicting a sprint.
Anytime the road barely goes uphill, Pucker likes to ride the front. He likes to get aggressive. It's very predictable at this point after watching him race for into week 4 now.
Bjorn Andresen, well, he's taking the battle to the group at the moment at 21.6 kilometres. The attack is on, and it's a big one, just shy of 9 watts per kilo from Andresen. And this is a concerted effort now, Brad, because
Pucker is gapped here, showing a small gap back to Hayden Pucker here. You do not get a ton of opportunities like this, and Daniel Turek is handing an absolute gold mine to these guys right now. You got to stay on it, though. You've got Hayden Pucker, the Echelon Racing League leader, 3 seconds back off of this group. Will they be able to continue turning the screws here? Pucker was gapped. He has now caught the group. Turek going to start the attack here from about 500 meters out. Panizza is there. Here comes Thrall to the front. He's in good position for the final sprint. It's going to be Fryatt and Thrall going to the line together. Fryatt takes the early lead to the line. Thrall trying to come around at 11 watts per kilo, but Fryatt will hold on, and a new winner in the Echelon Racing League. Big upset this week. Neil Fryatt, your champ, beating Tom Thrall in a 2-up sprint to the line, and more importantly, dropping league leader Hayden Pucker.
Big kick coming off the front at the moment. Oh, it's Elise Gallegos. Laying it down.
Gallegos had a plan coming into this one, and it involved 10 watts per kilo off the line.
Aitken and Columbi, who are going to lead the charge out here. I tell you something, I think they've caught them napping, because Columbi comes over the top of Aitken. That is the finish line. Celine Columbi, Melissa Aitken. Columbi is going to take that from Aitken. Van Hooling, Gallegos, Hermansen and Penner, Nicole Meyer were caught napping. Julia Lemon from Canada is going to take the win.
I love this riding. Even with a minute 18 lead coming to the line, she still puts it into overdrive. We wrap up our combined women's field. Congratulations to another new winner here in the Echelon Racing League. A new name at the top of our leaderboard today as the Italian Celine Columbi gets it right out of the group. Well, an exciting week last week in week 4 as we press on with week number 5 this week in the Echelon Racing League, with the league championships and national championships on the horizon for the Americans and Canadians coming up here in just a few weeks. Brad Soner back with Emma Martin for another week of what may be some upset racing. Emma, exceptional week of racing last week where we saw upsets in both the elite men's and elite women's races.
We did indeed, Brad, and I have to say that Coffee Trail route in Colombia, the teams, well, it was a group of riders, a team of riders who worked together to take Hayden Pucker out of contention. This week, it's going to be different, possibly, but Hayden Pucker still stands at the top of the point standing overall in the Echelon Racing League with 760 points. Thomas Thrall, the Canadian champion, 745. He is close behind. He's had a first, a second, a third, and a fourth. So really nice consistency there from Thrall. Nair, 680 points in third. Can he hang on? Because Ricardo Panizza with 660 points is snapping at his heels.
Well, he's certainly within striking distance for the league championship lead. It'll be very interesting to watch that battle at the top of things. We're also going to be looking at maybe some new names at racing this week. This will be the last opportunity for American and Canadian riders to qualify for their upcoming national championships. They have to participate in at least one stop of the Echelon Racing League, and this being the final regular season week, I would expect to see some riders getting that qualification in ahead of their nationals.
Yeah, and we do indeed have some new riders on the start line today in the men's race because of exactly that, Brad. It is not long, the 1st and 2nd of February, that's the USA Nationals. The 8th and 9th, a week later, the Canadian Nationals, and our riders, well, they're getting ready for it. Today, however, it's Australia and 3 laps of the City Beach course. Each lap 9.4 kilometres, 28.2k in total. A bit more climbing this time, 250 metres, and it's really deceptive when you look at that lap, Brad, because it's constantly rolling. No big climbs, but lots of short, sharp bumps.
It's going to favor the interval effort riders out there. It'll be very interesting to watch how this one races after last week. They really find any elevation that they can in any of these courses. So anytime this course barely goes uphill, you're almost assuredly going to see some attacks and moves. So it'll be interesting to see where they make those moves on the City Beach course this week and who makes those moves, because we saw some surprising efforts early on last week from some surprising names. So I'll be interested to see if they make their way back this week to the front.
Well, I think the run to the finish is also going to be technical with that final climb, descent, and then flat run. And for those of you who have ridden the City Beach course, there's a sneaky, tight right-hand bend about 300 metres from the finish line. So you do not see that finish line from a long way out.
Great turnout here for week number 5. 32 riders taking to the start line here. You see some familiar names already on the list, but the one that everyone's going to be watching will be Hayden Pucker, who has been the dominant rider in this league, but last week proved that the giant can fall. So I think that's got to give some confidence to these guys as they take off today.
Oh, definitely. But as we were discussing last week, Brad, they really need to have a plan and execute a plan to take the sting out of Hayden Pucker. Because for me, this is the type of course that could really suit him. It is a hard course when raced. It may be a steadier course when you ride it, but when you race it, that is a different matter.
The other thing Pucker is going to have going against him this week will be these new riders, new legs. One, you're not really sure who to cover. You're not sure who the favorites are, if there are new names in there. And then the other is that a lot of these riders won't be afraid of Hayden Pucker, the way that riders who have been racing against him for 4 or 5 weeks straight now, they've been just continually beat down by Pucker's wattage. But there will be some riders in here who say, Hayden who? I don't mind attacking. I don't mind riding with this guy. So it'll be interesting to see if that changes the dynamic in this elite men's field.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? I think Pucker's strategy is go hard or go home. He's coming towards the front of the group at the moment, but new names on the right-hand side. And I've just seen Lachance in there as well, the Canadian rider. Now, I've seen him race before, and he is strong.
I think he's enjoying what is the calmest start to any Echelon Racing League stop that we've had in 5 weeks of racing. It's very quickly calmed down. They're going to average right around 5 watts per kilo here, which is a pretty serious effort into zone 5 and 6 for a few riders. But you'll know once they really light this rocket, you're going to see a lot of those names go into the red zone here once someone lifts the tempo here, but a relatively calm start. I'm a little surprised to see how relaxed this one has been early on here.
Yeah, big group rolling out of that start pen. They are just shy of 40 kilometres an hour, but the pack is completely together, all 32 riders, and a little bit of a stretch coming on the front. And I think this isn't necessarily a stretch. This is a not wanting to back the pace off.
Yeah, for so much of this, it'll just be survive into the group. Now you're starting to see riders responding to this effort. Right here, you see this first little kicker on the course. First time that road goes uphill. And look at the right side of the screen, all red inside your top 7 spots here as everyone goes into zone 6. Trying to follow that move on the front. Looks like Kayet, the Canadian, has been setting the early tempo up there. But Lachance, Pucker, Panizza all there. And just kind of setting tempo early on. We get our first look at Ricardo Panizza's Pain Cave. Always calm, cool, and collected right in the front of the group here.
Well, even when he's sprinting with the jersey flapping and the fan blowing, Ricardo Panizza always looks good on the bike. And he is one class bike racer. Ethan Crane on the front of the group at the moment. Zach Nair paying close attention. Panizza picking up the pace. And this is a short, sharp dig after the descent off of that first main climb. They're only at 2.1 kilometres into this 28.2 kilometre race. But already the gradient up and down and really stretching the riders. The pace, well, Pucker's on the front at the moment as they go over the crest of the hill and drop onto what is a very gentle descent. Zach Nair straight on his wheel. Now, we've seen Pucker and Nair work together before, Brad. Do you think this could be a course where we see it again?
They can certainly try. If there's separation, I would not be surprised at all to see those two working together, both riding on that Project Echelon team. It's also a coach-student relationship. Zach Nair is the coach of Hayden Pucker, so he'll certainly know his ins and outs well, obviously. And yeah, I would assume do anything that he can to help Hayden Pucker get another win here in the Echelon Racing League. Or maybe Pucker turns it over to Zach Nair and lets Nair have a go at it today, because all eyes are going to be on Pucker. And when you're following the right hand, sometimes it's the left hand that attacks.
Yeah, that's a sneaky 1-2. Well, Benjamin Brignall, great to see him in the pain cave. You can see him on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. A real look of concentration. Big fan. That is an essential piece of equipment when racing indoors. Also great to see Russell Payne. The Canadians are out in force today. Really got an eye, I think, on those national championships on the 8th and 9th of February, as Bjorn Andreasen, the Danish rider, is the rider to push on the front at the moment.
That's why these guys were so locked into that screen. One of the most important things in virtual racing is being able to respond to the moves that go. And so, as Andreasen goes, the most important thing is that you respond to that as quickly as possible. And that's why you see these riders so intently focused on the gameplay screen while they're riding. It may look like they're just riding in a group, but it requires such finesse to be there and be in the position and then be able to ramp that power up instantly as soon as you see someone like Bjorn Andreasen making his move. And now you see him backing off. What he was doing is drawing out other riders, seeing if he could split some riders off the back of the group. That's the difficult part of racing here. It's the intensity, it's the ramp ups, it's the interval efforts that make virtual racing so tough. And now you see Andreasen back out of the saddle. He's going to keep this one going. And Hayden Pucker likes what he sees, so he's going to get a little taste of that up to the front as well.
Well, he is indeed, and he's pushing on the front here. So Pucker, Panizza, Andreas, and Mar Thrall all at the front of the group. And it's interesting what you're talking about there, Brad, because the riders can see exactly what our viewers can see on the screen as well. So they've got a whole dearth of information to take in and process at the same time as race. But they've also, as you can see, with a group of 32 that's now just starting to split, 7 riders on their screen on the right hand side. It's the data they can see for them. So if you are at the front of the group, you can't see past the data for the 7th rider behind you. So there are unknowns that you also have to process.
This is such a crucial time in the race right now because you're watching the first selection being made. And if you're on the wrong side of that, those panic bells better be ringing. It does not get much worse than this scenario. You can see a clear line with one rider in the middle stuck in the gap trying to go across. But this is the kind of gap that turns into a 10-second, then a 15-second, then a 30-second, then a minute gap. It can get out of hand very quickly. So these guys in the front group got to be feeling good about where they are. But now look at the panic setting in behind them. Everyone abandoning ship in that second group and heading out on their own to try to join this front group.
They really are trying to come across and close that gap. And I think one rider is going to do it successfully. The rest of the group, well, they need to continue to throw an off on the front of that pack to close it down because the pace has picked up. And Bjorn Andreasen, John Brune, Zach Nair, Bruce Bird, David Weinstein, all at the front of the group, continuing to put the power down on the descent at the moment because you can't assume descents are for recovery here on MyWhoosh on the Echelon Racing League. This is where we have seen a lot of the action. And Andreasen now, look at the response from Zach Nair, 10 watts per kilo behind. He does not want to let Andreasen go.
Andreasen, maybe the most hated man in this field right now, attacking on the downhill, keeping the pressure on. Nair responds, Panizza on the way up. These guys have seen what Andreasen can do before. He's got a good long-range effort on him. He can certainly split this group. So this is a rider that you take very seriously when they move off the front. When you see names like Zach Nair, Ricardo Panizza, Bruce Bird chasing, those are guys that know this field well. They know this sport well. They're incredibly tuned in to how these things play out. And so they're kind of my canary in the coal mine when I see a move like Bjorn Andreasen go there. If those guys follow, that's a serious one, and I would think other riders are doing the same.
Well, Zach Nair pops up on our screen and you can see the look of concentration marking Andreasen at the moment. But one of the interesting things on the bottom left-hand corner of the race footage, you can see clearly now 2 main groups on the road. The larger group being the first group, the smaller group being the chase group, but real clear daylight now between the 2 groups. And just taking a look to see who's made that front group. Judd Hurd is here. He's had strong racing before here on the Echelon Racing lead. Adam Carr is in the mix as well. And Benjamin Brignall, the rider we were taking a look at earlier on, the Canadian rider, in the group as well.
Back with Peter Olenichek, another Project Echelon rider, into, it looks like, the second group on the road. You can see they have now lost sight of that front group up the road. It's amazing how quickly these things fall apart. Just 9 minutes into this race, and already you've got about a half and half split in this field, with half the group trying to chase Olenichek up into the front group. I'm sorry, you're looking at the chase group on the left side of your screen here, so they can barely see him. Dan Zegelar going to try and go across now. This is one of the hardest things to do in virtual racing, and the problem is this is energy that you're not going to have later. So even if Zegelar does go across and make it across here, he's already made a big draw on his wattage bank here. And once those guys start attacking again in the front group, that's going to be another effort that Zegelar is going to have to go through, and eventually you're going to overdraw that account. So Zegelar doing a lot of work to try to get up here. Hang in there, Dan. You can do it. You're about to get back into the draft.
Well, he is indeed about to go back into the draft, and you'll see his watt numbers on the top of the screen turn green. They're white at the moment, indicating he's not in the draft. There you go, green in the draft, getting that little bit of energy conservation when those numbers go green. But that pack absolutely motoring on the front, and however hard this group have worked to close the gap, it is difficult because Jean-Michel Lachance is the rider who has attacked off the front. I told you I'd seen him ride well and strongly before. And it's fabulous to see him here on the Echelon Racing League. Adam Carr on the front of the group, but take a look at that. There's not a lot of chase from behind at the moment. They're on the flat ground. They're about to run in to that final, I'm going to call it a hillock, is a Scottish term for you, a hillock on the run in towards the finish at the end of the lap. It's the last big kick, but at the moment, Lachance has 7 seconds.
This is the kind of ride that wins Echelon Racing League stops right here. You've got to take these big gambles if you want to beat names like Hayden Pucker, but you're not going to beat him in a straight-up group battle to the line. So Lachance taking a big gamble here, but that's what you're going to have to do if you want to try and win big here. Now look at this, Zach Nair in the chase group working with Bjorn Andresen trying to chase this one down. This is exactly how some teammates can work together here, because this would be an effort where you would put someone on the front that you would want to chase things down. So I think they're going to use Zach Nair here, burn his legs a little bit for the Project Echelon team to try to keep Hayden Pucker in a perfect setup right here. Look at that. Zach Nair is going to launch Hayden Pucker right up to Jean-Michel Lachance. There is no better example of teamwork than what you just saw right there. An absolute 1-2 slingshot from Nair and Pucker, and it got Pucker not only up to Lachance, but shot him right by him.
Oh, great racing as they come towards the end of lap 1. They're on the descent now into the city. Andreasen tight to Puck as well. Panizza, Thrall, Ospina, Brune, and Nair all in the chase group behind at 3 seconds. They do not look panicked by the two riders, should I say, clear at the moment. They look very happy to leave them there, but Pucker is not backing off the pace. Andreasen, well, he sort of wanted to sit in Pucker's draft, and he's moved back over. He's nowhere near at the level of power of Pucker at the moment, taking the tow. But the chase group behind, interestingly, not as animated as I might have thought.
I think they're watching
Look
Hayden
at that.
Pucker do what Hayden Pucker does best.
Yeah, Lachance was at 1.9 watts per kilo in the group. It's almost like you're just letting the world champion from 2023 and Hayden Pucker, who we know is on outstanding form. He's heading the league table at the moment on the Echelon Racing League. Ride away. And everybody in the back is like looking at everybody else going, go on then, after you. No, after you. No, please, you go first. And in all that messing around, they're just letting them ride clear.
Well, even Bjorn Andresen, the only guy that went with Hayden Pucker, he has been just dropped fair and square right out of the group with Pucker. Pucker just rode him right off his wheel. So maybe it's a matter of can't instead of won't or shouldn't. But right now, Hayden Pucker nursing a 7-second lead over these guys. Andreessen's going to come back into this group. I think that's probably the smart move. Once you get dropped, if there's no longer any draft to be had from Hayden Pucker, you have to go back into that group and try and save your energy. Try and get guys like Bruce Bird on your team and link up and try and chase him down. So Bruce Bird doing a big service to this group right now when no one else is willing to do the work. Bird steps up here.
We've seen Bruce Bird put in some monumental attacks and toes to the group in trying to break down and bring back the riders and groups that are away. But nobody willing to help him. Look at that. Herd comes up onto his wheel and then sits up. Andreessen taking a rest now in the pack. Thrall not really interested here in doing the chasing. Thomas Thrall, we know he's got a phenomenal sprint on him, and we've seen him go up against Neil Fryatt, the rider who won last week's Echelon Racing League. Not on the start line today due to illness, I understand, but I'll be upset he's missing this, because I'm sure he would have loved to have been right in the mix here today.
See, Zach Nair could see the selfish riding that was happening in the group. He could see that no one was really taking charge, and that's, I think, why he went to the front here to try to lift the tempo. Very good read here from Nair, as, again, his teammate is now 12 seconds up the road. I don't know that Nair is going to do anything to drag this group up, but if he can go across that gap, Zach Nair would certainly take that opportunity to go join Hayden Pucker here, as long as he doesn't bring the group with him. So I think Nair tried to get away there. He realized that he wasn't going to get the gap, and now he's going to let up and let Hayden Pucker do what he does best. But you can look at the numbers on the screen. I mean, it's a very simple math equation. I went to public school here in the United States, and even I can figure out that you've got to make that number bigger than the number that Hayden Pucker's putting out there if you want to catch him before the end of this race.
And it's the speed, it's the kilometres per hour that is absolutely crucial, and that really is the one you want to look at. Now, obviously, because the course is up and down and rolling here, it's very, very different. So Pucker on the climb at the moment is 36 kilometres an hour. The group coming in to the base of that same climb at 46 kilometres an hour. When you get on the flatlands, that's where we've seen the catches made. And some very, very steady pacing has been the name of the game, where the lead group might have been doing 36, 37 kilometres an hour, and then the chaser doing 40, and just slowly closing the gap, because you do not want to catch and then not have anything to stay with them, or then to launch a subsequent attack as you come into the finish line. So smart cookies win the race today, and at the moment, wow, Hayden Pucker's 15 seconds clear.
Yeah, he's right in his sweet spot. You can see him riding at a solid 5.8, 5.9 watts per kilo. It really doesn't vary much. He is right where he wants to be on that trainer. This guy's feeling like $1 million out there today. And he's going to lock in right here and just stay right there, because it's working. He is continuing to build time on names like Bruce Bird, Zach Nair, Jurd Hurd, who are not working together at all. These guys are in their own world in the chase group back here.
Well, I'll tell you something. Zach Nair is working, but he's not working for anybody in the group. He's working for Hayden Pucker, who's down the road, because the second someone puts in an attack like Bird, Nair responds. He closes the gap down, he gets on the front, and he sits up straight away. Classic teamwork tactics being played out here, but not teamwork to close the gap, teamwork to keep the gap.
Yeah, Zach Nair didn't come here to make any friends. He's got plenty of those. So right now he's just being the best teammate that he can to his man up the road, who is continuing to build the lead. Meanwhile, get a good look at David Weinstein. This will be a new name making this front selection here in the Echelon Racing League. So nice to see that he's been able to respond to these brutal attacks. He wasn't able to go with the currently leading move, but to survive in this group with these names, a very good ride for Weinstein so far.
Yeah, with one rider down the road, Pucker, 11 riders in this chase group. And interesting that John Brune is the rider off the back of the group by 6 seconds. So Brune just not able to stay with this constant up, down pace at the moment. Brignall is the rider leading the chase group behind. And that's looking like that's just 2 riders. Then Russell Payne at 26 seconds. Adam Carr at 32. Looks like he's actually got company. But it's looking like it has been, how long can you stay in and stay on that group, and then riders getting dropped out the back.
John Brune, the loneliest man here on our MyWhoosh courses. He has nothing behind him, and he's looking at that group riding away in front of him. This is one of the hardest things that you can do, a solo effort to go across a gap and try and join. I am not envious of John Brune right now and the work that he's got ahead of him.
Well, I agree, but there is something I think we've learnt through this Echelon Racing League, and that's when you get dropped off the group, do not assume they have gone forever. Because Brune doing a good, strong, steady ride and a steady pace there at the moment. And if that group continue to play around with their pace, he could well get back on, Brad. We have seen it happen before.
Bruce Bird going to lift the tempo in this group. Not happy with the easy riding that was going on there. When I say easy, I say 6 or 7 watts per kilo. Bird going to take it up to 7 or 8 watts per kilo as he tries to reel in what is now 18 seconds to Hayden Pucker. Brilliant effort here by Bruce Bird. I think what he's also doing is recognizing that there's going to be a lot of looking around when attacks start coming, and he's going to use that to his advantage because he knows that if he can get a gap here, he can hold a gap. And so Bruce Bird finds himself 2 seconds out of this group, and there's a lot of looking around going on in the race for third.
Well, Bruce Bird has had some really strong performances. And actually, do you know, he's lying fifth overall in the league table in this Elites men's race. But his best finish performance is sixth. And for me, that doesn't really give our viewers a clear indication of just how much work Bird does during the racing. We're in with Thomas Thrall at the moment, the Canadian champion. He's pushing hard on the back of that group to stay in as they're on the climb on the bridge.
Bird, definitely one of the most aggressive guys in this group. That is for sure. It's a pleasure watching him every week. He always keeps the racing interesting. Certainly doesn't put us through any boring racing when you see Bruce Bird on the start list. I would put Tom Thrall on that list as well. He's riding very conservatively today. He's not riding like this normal aggressive style on the front. So I think he is realizing there's enough horsepower in this group that he's better off served just kind of letting these guys fight it out, just surviving, and then kind of seeing who's left at the end of it. Meanwhile, look at this. Bjorn Andreasen on the right-hand side of your screen getting into some trouble here after a very good start, but now finds himself off the back of that front group.
Well, I wonder whether that's a clear decision from Andreasen, but it does mean that that chase group of 11 now becomes a chase group of 10. Well, actually, do you know what? I might rephrase that. We've got Hayden Pucker in 1, Bruce Bird in 2, and a chase group of 9.
I like it. Let's give Bird his own group. He deserves it for the daring effort that he's making off the front of the group right here. Not a ton of response. He's going to lock it in right under 6 watts per kilo. So this is a big effort. Bird is the kind of guy that can go across to Hayden Pucker, but I question whether he wants to because once he gets there, he's going to get blown up anyway. Pucker will absolutely just demolish him as soon as he gets up there. So Bird may be racing for second place here, but again, this is a great way to earn a silver medal in an Echelon Racing League stop.
Oh, it is indeed. And we have seen riders go clear of chase groups by them just not responding. We've seen some strong responding coming from Thrall and Panizza behind, but the group seem to have backed off again. They're happy to leave Bird, who's on our screen at the moment. You can see the effort on his face that this attack and this push has been producing. But Ospina coming onto the front of the group behind him and going to 2.5 watts per kilo. Bird is clear at the moment by 3 seconds of the chase group. He's 23 seconds down on the leader, Hayden Pucker. And at this point in time, I'm not seeing a concerted effort to bring Bruce Bird back. This could be a very smart move.
Oh, we'll see if the gamble pays off as Bird stays on it, keeping that effort high. You saw his rider cam just a little bit ago, clearly showing the pain of the effort that he's put in here. But once you make a move like this, you got to go all in. You've got to commit to it. There is no going back at this point. There's no turning around. You don't want to waste all that effort that you just did to establish this, what is a relatively small gap right now. We'll call it 5 seconds back to these guys. But in the virtual world, that's pretty good to establish a solo 5-second lead over names like Panizza, Thrall, and Roca.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. I've just been watching Panizza and Thrall push on in the attempt to close it down. In fact, Thomas Thrall came onto the front of the group at 7 watts per kilo, and I thought, oh, here we go. We're going to bring this group back now. They've had enough. They've seen it go to 5 seconds, and they've decided that is long enough to let Bird hang out there at the front. But the pace very quickly went off. Thrall went hard. Panizza came in, but nobody else went with them. So the pace back off now on this chase group. And Bird, well, he's continuing to ride and he's about to go around the corner ahead. Out of sight. There you go. Out of mind.
Mason Roca, another name in this group that
Yeah.
hasn't really ridden the front much. He's going to take over here and put in some efforts, but that looks like a fresh Mason Roca to me. He's looking really good on the bike, looking at the rider cam here compared to some other guys who have put in massive efforts early on here. So wouldn't be surprised to see Roca make a strong second half effort out of this group, as it looks like somebody lifting the tempo along the water here, and that's going to split the group up a little bit more.
Well, I agree with you. He's been very hidden in this group and been conserving energy, I think. And it's often the silent ones we need to watch. Roca, fifth place in round three, his best performance on the Echelon Racing League. So he is right where he should be. Oh, Panizza's picking it up now. That's it. 5 seconds is too far for Ricardo Panizza. Bruce Bird, he is on the toe back in because Panizza is the rider. I tell you something though, Panizza is going on his own. And if you look at the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, the group is really splitting.
If Panizza and Bird link up here, that'll be a huge, huge get for both of them. So I'm sure Bruce Bird is virtually cheering on Ricardo Panizza here, saying, come on, let's work together. Get up to me. I'm happy to ride with you as long as you don't drag these other guys with you. Don't bring Thomas Thrall. Don't bring Jean-Michel Lachance. Don't bring Mason Roca here. And that's working. Panizza's got the gap. He's 3 seconds off the wheel of Bird, but he's got to close this immediately. I don't know if Bird wants to let up here. Panizza's doing 8 watts per kilo. That's about all a human can do to try and go across a gap here. So maybe Bird lets off just a little bit, just 1 watt per kilo or so to kind of invite Panizza up here. But I think if you're Bruce Bird, just keep with the plan, stick to what you're doing, and see if Panizza can make it up there.
Well, take a look at
Might
that
be
there
Zach
now.
Mayer
Well,
making it up
that
there,
is the
actually.
yeah. He wanted Panizza's back wheel, and he stopped the second he hit that back wheel of Panizza. Now he's starting to pick it up again a little, but not a lot. I think he's watching to see whether Panizza went onto his back wheel or whether he rolled straight up and over the top. But now it is Nair and Panizza. Bruce Bird is the rider ahead of them. Hayden Pucker is down the road by around 30 seconds as he continues his time trialing effort on the front of this race. He's at 19.3 kilometers into a 28.2 kilometer race. And the constantly changing gradient, I think, is really working for him today.
Well, continuing to build the lead. Bird is now about 34 seconds off of Hayden Pucker's wheel. This is the big story to watch, though. You're watching these 3, call it 4 riders now about to catch Bruce Bird, or at least trying to catch Bruce Bird, holding on to a 5-second lead up the road here. Panizza, Weinstein, Roca, Nair, Hurd. They tried to go away. They've come back together, but it did take a small chunk out of that gap. At this point, Bruce Bird is racing for second place. He's trying to hold on for a second spot finish here because it's a much, much tougher ask to go up to Hayden Pucker here, but it is possible that he could hold this group off. So that's going to be the story that I'm watching as Bird tries to hold on. More casualties of that tempo. Carlos Ospina, the latest victim here to come unglued.
Oh, now that is surprising. Ospina has put in some fabulous performances and very, very consistent. He's lying 7th overall in the standings. Very close between him and Alex Marr. Just, 12 points. So Marr still in the group. Marr is going to be very happy about that, but we're in with Ospina, and you can see there in his pain cave, he's going to need to be consistent, but he's got a gap on Andreasen, the rider behind him, that is less than the group ahead. But it's looking like John Brune has caught up to Bjorn Andreasen. Now, if they catch Ospina, that could be a very strong chase group of 3.
Meanwhile, you're Hurd leaving the chase group to try to catch Bruce Bird on his own. Got a small gap, only about a second ahead of Marr, Panizza, and Nair. There's a great look behind him. But he's about 2 seconds up to Bruce Bird, so maybe these guys link up and can get back away, but it looks like Hurd is more than likely going to drag these guys up. He's still got a gap over Roca, Panizza, and those guys behind him. They're going to make contact here with Bird and Hurd into the chase group. I like that, and then we'll see how the 4th place group on down goes. Now, this is a crucial time. When they make contact, they've got to get to work quickly. Like, they have to have a very smooth transition. Hurd probably going to just sit right on the wheel of Bird, but you have to feather your way in there. You can't just hit the back and stop pedaling. It's about sort of curving your way down. That was a perfect exchange right there, and now these guys can get to work.
Hurd is a strong rider and obviously really coming into form before those USA National Championships at the beginning of February and really pushing that form and showing everyone what he can do early. He might not be at the front of this race with Pucker, but now he is the one who has shown it's possible to close the gap from the chase group to Bird. And the group behind, well, it's looking like Lachance is now coming to the front of the group, but the second he hits the front, he's back off the pace again.
Yeah, what you're probably going to see is just ones and twos trying to come up and go across. There won't be a concerted chase effort in this group of, let's call it, five guys that you're looking at on your screen right now. What will happen here is one by one, they'll either fall off the back or try their best to go across. And I think the two chasers up there, Bird and Hurd, would prefer that they go off the back. They don't want any more help. There's no real reason to add a third rider to that group that they've got going right there because they're not going to catch Hayden Pucker before the end of the day here. So that's really second and third place getting locked in right now. And I don't think Hurd and Bird want to add anyone to the group. They don't need any more horsepower. The party's full.
Well, let's just confirm. So Hayden Pucker in one, 32 seconds clear of Hurd and Bird in second and third, both of them together. 11 seconds clear of the chase group of 7 riders. Thrall is in there, Nair is in there, Rocker is in there, Panizza is in there. It's a strong, strong chase group, and it's going to be interesting to see. But the 2 escapees from that group now looking very comfortable in second and third place.
These guys are gone. 11 seconds. We'll call chase one clear of the other chasers, and they have really dropped the ball on this one. Every one of those guys had the shot to follow Yurt Hurd. When he went across that gap and joined Bruce Bird, they all decided not to. And now they're paying the price for it as those two have gotten away. That's second and third locking in. Again, 11 seconds up the road for these two, and they're going to keep working together. These guys will lock into each other, and that is a big problem for these two. Yeah, now these guys are all panicking back behind him. Tom Thrall, Jean-Michel Lachance going to try and go here. They realize that they've made the mistake of letting that group go. They lost their best opportunity to go across the gap to follow the wheel of Yurt Hurd, who was giving them a first-class ticket up to Bruce Bird here. And so now it's every man for themselves as Jean-Michel Lachance is going to be the latest guy to try to go across what is now an 8-second gap up to those chasers.
Oh, you got it nailed, Brad. It is ones off the front, ones off the back. Lachance is the next one off the front of the group, trying to chase down Hurd and Bird in second and third. He's eyeing that group up ahead and thinking, well, 3 riders is a better sprint finish for second, third, and fourth than being in a pack that contains the Canadian current national champion, Thomas Thrall, who we know has got an absolute dynamite sprint on him.
A little over 5K of racing to go for these guys, so they're running out of time to close this gap if they want a shot at second, third, and now fourth place going up the road here. So Jean-Michel Lachance taking a gamble here, holding on to 9 seconds over Nair, Mar, Thrall, and then watching that battle with Andresen and Ospina, who look like they have locked in together back behind this group. But panic starting to set in. Look at the heads bobbing on all these rider cams. Everybody going all in.
Look at the pain on the faces on the rider cam and the absolute commitment and dedication to that effort. Zach Nair, oh, a huge big breath in. Rocco Nair, Panizza, Mar, Weinstein, Thrall. These are the riders in the group, and the pace is up, the pace is down, but they are not closing the gap. So Pucker out in front, Bird and Hurd. Well, Lachance was doing the chasing there. This is the group behind, and they're pretty much on and off the pedal. No consistency, Brad.
Yeah, and the difference is these guys are relaxing on the downhill. The 2 in chase 1 are not. They're keeping the pressure on. I was looking at 5 watts per kilo on the way down for these guys when they're doing 2 or 3 in what we'll call chase 2 on the road. Chase 1 was up there doing 5 or 6 watts per kilo on the way down. So that ain't going to add up. The math isn't mathing for these guys if they want to catch Bird and Hurd, who are now 16 seconds up the road from this chase. And you can see the concerted effort is paying off for those 2 up the road, as Jean-Michel Lachance is just struggling to bring back any significant chunks of time, still at 10 seconds. He's been out there for 3 or 4 minutes now by himself, and that really quickly gets into dangerous territory.
And he's around 150 metres behind Hurd and Bird and around 600 metres behind Hayden Pucker, which gives you a little bit of a different take on just the size of the gaps. The seconds are on the screen, but the metres on the road, well, sometimes unattainable to close those down. Hayden Pucker on the top left-hand side of your screen at 25 kilometres. He's got 3.2 kilometres to go until he sees the finish line. 33 seconds clear of Bruce Bird and Gerd Hurd. Interestingly, that is bouncing around a little between around 30 and 35 seconds every time we drop in. Jean-Michel Lachance, the Canadian rider, 15 seconds back in fourth place. It's looking like Panizza and Thrall are indeed about to bring him back in. That's on the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. And on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, Ospina, Andresen and Brune. This is a group of three, and it's looking like they're working together well.
Little disruption in the ranks in the race for second. Hurd and Bird going at it together. We just watched a big attack from Gerd Hurd, and now Bruce Bird going over the top of that one. These guys are battling for second right now as Hayden Pucker ticks away his last kilometer solo off the front here. Bird and Hurd are locking in. This is going to be a great battle for second place today in top 5 of the Echelon Racing League.
But I'll tell you something, Brad. They've got 3 kilometres to go. If they were them, let me rephrase that. If I were them, my first priority would be ensuring second and third place and working together to ensure that. It's only a 23-second gap, and we know the power some of those riders can put out in that chase group. Number one, I would want to still be working together as a duo to ensure that we are on the podium. And then maybe 1,500 metres out, when the gap is absolutely adamantly not going to be closed, worry about who gets second and third.
Oh, that's the million-dollar question. When are you safely away from the chasers? When can you stop racing with each other and start racing against each other? One of these guys is going to have to make a decision, and I think Hurd has decided that he's done racing with Bruce Bird. He's going to start racing against him right here, opening the gap into the last couple kilometers of racing here. Bird able to respond, but this is a clear message from Gerd Hurd that he's ready to race.
Well, I'll tell you something. The timing of that attack, really interestingly, because they are about 40 seconds away from the bridge. That's the last climb you can see right on the top-hand side of the screen. Pucker about to go up onto it. It's a steep climb. It does top at just shy of 8%. For me, that would be the ideal place to attack, not necessarily burn your matches before it. Hurd is either feeling really strong and wanted to see what Bird had in the tank, because the bridge is coming, the climb is coming, and if he goes again, we know that was a false move.
Yeah, just like boxing, right? You don't make your KO swing on your first round. You got to kind of give him the body blows, jab him left and right before you go for the big one here. I think that's what Hurd is doing. He's just putting in small attacks, small efforts, trying to soften up Bruce Bird here before he goes for the big one inside the last, let's say, kilometer or 800 meters or whatever he's comfortable doing the effort at. Meanwhile, Bruce Bird hanging on. He's responding to every single one of these moves. You got to remember, Bird started this move. He was the guy that went away solo by himself, rode solo for about 15 minutes of this race before Hurd eventually joined him. So Bird made some big withdrawals early on, but he's responded to everything that Gerd Hurd has thrown at him, and now Bird giving him a little taste of his own medicine.
Well, I think people are going to have to watch out for Bruce Bird in the Canadian national champs. Jean-Michel Lachance and Thomas Thrall locked together, really pushing on at the front of the chase group. They must, I think, from the Watts just have hit that climb. Yep, they have indeed. So Lachance and Thrall, Panizza and Nair, the riders in the chase group, and those are pushing on. They're now 35 seconds down on Bird and Hurd, and 1 minute 20 down on Pucker. Hayden Pucker is clear for his run in to the finish today. He has broken away from the rest of the riders here on the Echelon Racing League in lap 1 of 3. He has soloed his way clear all the way through this course, and he has just slowly extended his gap. He's now got 40 seconds on that chase group, and that was him going underneath the banner and taking the win.
Hayden Pucker going to add another perfect week to his Echelon Racing League resume as Hurd and Bird now on the run into the finish inside the last few hundred meters. This is going to be another battle to the line here. Bird going to get to the front as Hurd attacks early. Over 10 watts per kilo for Urt Hurd. Now they can see that arch inside as Bird gets to the front. Hurd going all in on his effort. Bruce Bird about to break that trainer underneath him as he puts in everything he's got into the finish. And Bruce Bird going to hold on for second place today.
Well, I'll tell you something, he gets a round of applause from me in the studio today. That is class racing from Bruce Bird today. Absolutely brilliant as we see the group come in behind there, 200 metres out, and it's Alex Marr who's opened up the gap from Ricardo Panizza, but Panizza's kicked and shy of 15 watts per kilo. Can he come over Alex Marr, or has Alex Marr got his timing right? That's the finish line. Panizza is coming. Panizza goes over the top of Marr. Weinstein is coming as well, but Ricardo Panizza is going to take fourth place. He's going to lead the group over the line. Alex Marr, David Weinstein, Zach Nair, Mason Rocker and Thomas Thrall. That is the group. Wow, what a sprint.
Panizza with another great finish this week, getting the best of his group. That'll be good for fourth place on the day. Meanwhile, John Brune finishing up his day. He put a good effort in early on. I think a lot of these riders, you got to respect the effort. You got to respect the gamble that they took. It didn't pay off. They ended up out of the group, but these are all riders that put in early efforts and were real playmakers in the opening kilometers.
And interestingly, Brune dropped off that chase group before Ospina and Andreasen, but those are now behind him as Ospina opens up a sprint, trying to bring back John Brune before the finish line. But Brune, I think, is going to get underneath that banner before Ospina catches him. He does indeed. Bjorn Andreasen, the next rider to come underneath the banner. And I think he's going to take, what's that? That must be 13th today.
Certainly an interesting week this week in the Echelon Racing League, not necessarily at the top of the leaderboard, but it was the battles for second and third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth. Had a great one out there as well. It's really seeing some consistent battles forming over what is now 5 weeks of racing in the Echelon Racing League. Looking forward to the final next week and then into national championships for the Americans, and then the Canadians will have their national championships the week after that. So this is really getting in, Emma, to a prime time of your virtual racing season. If you're a rider who's targeting that stars and stripes for the Americans or Canadians, these are some of the most important weeks of your season right here.
Well, also you can start to see which riders are on form and which riders are targeting those national championships. Hayden Pucker in one today, 37 minutes, 41 seconds of racing to take the win. Bruce Bird and Urt Hurd, they were 36 seconds back. Ricardo Panizza in fourth, over a minute, winning the sprint from the chasing group. Alex Marr, David Weinstein, Zach Nair, Ricardo Panizza and Thomas Thrall. Jean-Michel Lachance, a good ride from him to come in 10th place today.
Another week of explosive racing in the Echelon Racing League. It'll be interesting to see if this carries over to our elite women's race coming up after this. We also had a chance to catch some of our amateur races earlier. We also run a paracycling race in parallel with the Echelon Racing League every week. So big shout out to the amateurs that have been competing every week. And then obviously getting ready for our elite women's race coming up here. Any predictions for that one, Emma? I would expect to see some new names coming up here in the next block of racing as well. Talking about those Americans and Canadians that haven't yet raced in the Echelon Racing League. This will be their last week and last shot to get on the start list.
No, Brad, I'm really looking forward to that women's race. Let me tell you, you could have thrown a blanket over the top 7 women last week. 5 seconds separated the top 7 women in that race last week. And if this race is anything to go by, it's going to be very strategic. We're going to see new riders and, well, the riders are really going to have to watch what they are doing because anything could happen.
We'll see if we have the same dominant performance as we're going to take a break and leave you with some highlights from our B and C category races that were held earlier today. And when we come back, we'll take a look at our elite women's race. They're going to be doing that exact same course that we just watched our elite men do. But I think the lesson there was that the rollers once again matter, even though it doesn't really show up on that profile. Those rollers were huge today, Emma.
They were indeed, and that constantly changing course really creating the racing and providing opportunities. And interesting to see today the teamwork being done, and those riders wanting to chase, those riders not wanting to chase, and how that played out. In the women's elite, let's just remember Lisa Hermansen is at the top of the table with 745 points, Liz Van Hooling 720, Elise Gallegos 715, Melissa Aitken 705. It is close for the Echelon Racing League women's, and I think a number of those women are going to have those overall standings in their heads as well.
That women's field has been super consistent over the last few weeks. It's been a real pleasure watching a consistent group back every week. So excited to get back to that here in just a few minutes. We're going to take a quick break here, leave you with some highlights from our B and C category races earlier. And when we come back, we'll have your elite women's coverage.
I'm Riley Harvey, and this is the Echelon Racing League men's Cat B event from earlier on today on MyWhoosh. It's race 4, and Eric Lerman is lighting it up from the very start, using the descent to break away from the pack and shrink things out. It's not going to be an easy race from the get-go here. After Eric Lerman was caught by the pack, Jonathan Bisson resumed the antics that he displayed last week with repeated attacks. But it was Jeremy Che that had the most sustained attack, going solo off the front but never really distancing the pack. He was always in sight and always an easy catch for a strong pack working together. At times Che was managing to open up a gap of 10 seconds, but unfortunately this would not be enough to keep him to the finish line. He does, however, in my opinion, gain the most combative rider today. Being caught by a much thinned down pack, Jeremy Che risked dropping out of the back and out of contention, but managed to power his way back on. There were many attacks here now, and the legs were weary from the micro climbs crossing all the bridges on this event. Jonathan Bisson once again tried to go clear, repeating his successes of last week, and was almost joined by Scott Cunningham to make it a 2-up breakaway again. But unfortunately the pack were wary of his antics and the way he rode, and they kept them closed down. It wasn't long before Jeremy Che surged once again. But again, a wary pack, not wishing to let anyone go so close to the finish line, closed this down. This led to an increase in speed in the pack. Nearer the finish line, there were attacks from many riders. Patrick Caldwell, Eric Lerman, Scott Cunningham, to name but a few. All these were closely monitored and closed down. And it was a final pack sprint that led to a climatic finish, with Jose Montevideo taking first, a timed attack from Garguilo nearly passing him at the finish line, but just microseconds too late. Montevideo held on for the finish. Garguilo second place, and Mayer for third. I'm Riley Harvey, and this is the Echelon Racing League's Cat C women's race from earlier on today on MyWhoosh. The race started quickly with a downhill gradient just after the start, leading to a faster pace for the riders. It wasn't long before they were down to a pack of 12, with Mary Allen and Margaret Thompson suffering with the pace. Many of the riders were distanced. Ange Quapp and Tatiana Sanchez were dropped. And riders fighting hard to find their way back onto the group. It was clear that riders were not happy with the pace. Valentina Disania making frequent changes at the front of the group, pushing the pace onwards, keeping the tempo high. And at one point, KJ Phillips from Coalition found herself on the wrong side of a break that was to lead the group to diminish to only 6. Towards the end of the race, KJ Phillips went early, fearing that they didn't have the power in the legs with some of the more Watt monsters that were in the group. And Valentina Desenia went long. A strong push for the finish line, but Laura Taconis, watching this, went over the top to take an early lead in the run to the finish line. Andrea Smith and Palma Wangeli were both fighting hard, but Valentina Desenia found a second wind to keep them behind her and fought hard for the second place. Laura Taconis went over clearing first. Valentina Desenia hard fought second place after an early break, and Wangela getting third.
Well, some really amazing tight battles in those amateur categories. We don't see a whole lot of field sprints going to the line in our elite races, but it was really interesting to see how many group battles went to the line together in the B and C categories. It'll be interesting to see if that ends up happening in our elite women's race coming up here.
Well, it is, isn't it? And I do like to take a note of the earlier starting races. And I can tell you the Cat C women's race today, well, the top 5 were very, very close. But I'm not going to give any spoilers because there'll be a rewind next week.
And we'll be looking forward to that as our elite women starting to make their way into the starting grid here. Again, the wild cards this week will be the new riders that show up. There are a lot of very good riders that have not raced in the Echelon Racing League yet. They need to get one in before the national championship. So I think that is maybe the biggest story on my mind heading into this is what new names will start here in week 5 of the Echelon Racing League. They haven't been racing with us in the ERL, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they haven't been racing and training across the virtual platform. So I'm really excited to see who shows up here in week 5.
Well, we saw that shake it up in the men's race just a few minutes ago. I'm sure it's going to shake it up in the women's race because we do know there are brand new names on the start sheets today. And, well, Hermansen, Van Hooling, Gallegos, Aitken and Penner, the top 5 currently in the standings. It's so close. Lisa Hermansen has had 2 firsts, a 4th and a 5th. Van Hooling's had a 2nd, 2 thirds and a 5th. Gallegos has had a 1st, a 3rd, a 4th and a 6th. Aitken's had a 2nd, 2 4ths and a 6th. I can tell you, it has just moved itself around on the overall point scores you can see. Hermansen clear by 25 points at the moment, but Van Hooling only 5 points clear of Gallegos. Aitken is sitting there and she did brilliantly last week, taking 2nd place. So she's been rising through the ranks. Penner not far behind. Those 5 riders are going to be watching podium places and the overall league standings, as well as wanting to make the action today. But Celine Columbi was the rider who came out and took the win last week. She was new to the Echelon Racing League last week. One of those riders, Brad, that you say to watch out for, because those riders who are new this week may also do a sneaky win like Columbi did last week.
It'll be interesting to see if Columbi returns with a little taste for victory. If she wants another taste this week, we'll see if she makes it back to the start list. I also saw a name, Kristen Kolchinski, on that list, another rider who really called her shot in the ERL. She showed up once, had a great ride, got that out of the way, and hasn't returned since. So maybe she'll be looking for a tune-up heading into nationals here in a few weeks from now. There's no better training than racing, Emma, and getting a chance to line up against high-level riders are few and far between to get a bunch of really good riders together. So there aren't many better training opportunities than this week in the ERL.
Well, she is the defending champion for that USA national title that will be run on the 1st and 2nd of February. So, can indeed Kolchinsky remain national champion? Can she do the double? Can she defend that title? Or one of the names you see on the screen in front of you, give her a run for her money, because that USA nationals, that first weekend in February, the Canadian nationals, the second weekend in February, and those riders needing to qualify as well and getting one round in on the Echelon Racing League.
Once again, doing our course here in Australia on what looks like a relatively easy day on paper, but as we've learned, you can magnify these profiles by about 10 times the importance of the ups and downs.
Oh, yes, indeed. So the riders head out to Australia. City Beach is the course they are on, 9.4 kilometres a lap. 3 laps today for our women. That gives 28.2 kilometres of racing, 250 metres. It's really deceptive of climbing on this course. Lots of continual gradient changes. Very little flat on this course. It's either up or down. And we really saw that being instrumental in the men's race. I'm sure it's going to be instrumental in the women's race, and it really is going to create some action today.
It's really interesting on this course how quickly the important elevation changes come, because we saw that initial split, what would be the race winning split, happen in that elite men's race in the first 4 or 5 minutes of racing. We really saw the first group kind of split in half. It'll be interesting to see if the elite women have the same fate for them. But I got to say, this elite women's field has been much more, I want to say interesting, but less written in stone than we saw with the elite men. Much less predictable in this elite women's race. You really never know what you're going to get week to week in the ERL. Those 7 or 8 names on that leaderboard have been so consistent in showing up every week in the ERL. They deserve a lot of credit for one, continuing the battles, but 2, making it interesting for us. So I'm really excited to see all these familiar names back on that list. But once again, we're looking at the big names and the new names on this list, with 15 riders going to take a look at it. I see Alexi Snover lining up. That's another wild card name that had a really good race in week number 4, and we'll see if the Fountain rider is back on form for week 5 here.
Oh, Nyquist is here as well. That's going to be interesting. We've had 4 rounds so far, 3 different winners. Are we going to see another different winner in this women's race today? Or will one of those 3 do a double? The only rider who has managed a double is Lisa Hermansen so far. Is someone else going to join her today? Well, Stephanie Briggs, the Canadian rider on the front here. Let me just remind you, because we've got red jerseys and yellow jerseys. So the elite category are in the yellow jerseys. In the red jerseys, it's the women category B. So 2 different categories in this race, and interesting to see, it's the B cat riders who are dialing it off the front out the start pen.
Way to go, Stephanie Briggs, putting in a massive effort here off the line as a Category B rider, putting these elites on notice. Linda McHugh going to go with her, a pair of Category B riders animating this race early. Good on you, Stephanie and Linda.
Well, exactly. It's really interesting to see. Now, whether the tactics hold till the end is another matter, and I always think it's really interesting. Sometimes we see the elite riders, if they don't go from the gun, they sometimes have a steadier start than some of the other categories. And that's what we saw here, because the elite women having a steadier start to the race than the Category B women. But now the group all together, and those Category B riders sitting in. And that, for me, is where I would want to be if I was them.
100%. If you're a Category B rider and you can make it in this group today, that is a great day on MyWhoosh. So we'll be cheering on our Category B riders here, hanging with the elites and doing a fine job of it here early on. Now the road's starting to kick uphill. This is the first real major climb on the course. You see it goes up just under 5% very briefly, but look what happens to all the power. Everyone has to go into the red zone, including Stephanie Briggs up to the front here at 5 watts per kilo.
Oh, she is indeed. So it's Briggs and Gagnon at the front, Hermansen, Van Hooling, Penner, Snover, all in there. Kristen Hull on our screen at the moment. We can see the laptop there, the face of concentration, taking a look at the screen. She's in the group. It's a big group at the moment, continuing to roll through Aitken, Van Hooling, Columbi, Gallegos, Penner, Bowman's, all in there. Now, let's just remember last week in the Category B race, it was Julia Lemon who took the win. It doesn't look like she's on our start line today. So just reminding everybody, I think, the Canadian rider coming up to those Canadian National Championships, what she could do last week and ensuring her qualification place. New riders, new Canadian riders in here today. It's going to be interesting to see what they can do.
So women's B wide open here as they're still hanging with this group, waiting to launch this group into orbit here as they make their way down the hill at a nice 4% negative gradient on the way down. But pretty soon, somebody's going to get to the front of this one, and they're going to hit it hard. Like when this power goes, it's going to go big, and it's going to be Elise Gallegos launching her patented attack here at 10 watts per kilo early on. Gallegos did this last week, leading things out from the line, and Gallegos going to get the party started again this week.
Oh, she is indeed. And Tiffany Penner, 11 watts per kilo in response. She's gone up and over the top. And actually, Penner continues the attack on the descent on the other side. And that, I think, caught Gallegos a little bit by surprise. But Gallegos has picked up the pace. And she's trying to close the gap now. Liz Van Hooling, 11 watts per kilo from Van Hooling because she's seen the danger. Penner and Gallegos are two riders you do not want to let down the road. You do not want to let them go and go clear. Penner has showed us how phenomenal she is over the last few weeks on the Echelon Racing League. She's still got the coloured lights up in the pain cave. Absolutely brilliant. That lighting the way at the moment. And the way at the moment for Tiffany Penner is at the front of this race. Elise Gallegos, Liz Van Hooling, they are the riders with her. Melissa Aitken is now coming across. Lisa Hermansen is on her wheel. But then there's another gap back to Alexi Snover.
I got to give Van Hooling some credit. The queen of bridging just did it again and joined the front group as she went up to Penner and Gallegos very quickly, saw immediately what was happening and knew that she had to go with it. Hermansen is in the same boat here. They see these names. They know that Gallegos, Van Hooling, Penner, they can go all the way to the finish here today. It's 25K, call it from here, but Hermansen, Aitken, they all feel the pressure being put on the front right now. So it is on right now to respond to this. Just make sure that you're still in the conversation. Your worst case scenario is you get caught on the wrong side of this split right here that's forming in front of our eyes. Alexi Snover is on the front side of the wrong group, and you've got to close it down now. It's only going to get worse from here.
Well, I'll tell you the other rider who's on the wrong side of the split at the moment is Celine Columbi, the winner last week. She's with Snover. In fact, she's just gone over the top of Snover. Working together, those two could bring the group back. They are not far up the road at the moment, just 3 seconds, but there are 5 of them. I'm looking at the power and the pace coming out of that group, and I'm thinking at the moment Columbi and Snover could well reattach themselves. It's 1 or 2 seconds further back in the group to Gagnon. Tuma is there, Briggs is there as well. It really depends for me on what is happening in the front of the group, but they are about to hit the climb again, and the gradient is going up. You can see the gradient on the top right-hand corner of the screen, and Aitken and Columbi pushing down on those pedals. They are, in fact, Celine Columbi is really doing what she knows how to do well, and that is climb. She's utilising her strengths on the course, and that is climbing to close that gap down.
Columbia going to get into this group, no problem. I'll be interested to see Snover behind her. It's really more about how much effort they did to get across that gap and get in. But they both read this race correctly, seeing that this was going to be the winning move and realizing that they had to go no matter what to get across it. So Snover's going to make it in. Columbia's going to make it in. It'll be Gagnon and Bowman's the next riders that will have a shot at punching their ticket into this front group. Again, just a couple seconds off the group here, but it's now or never if you want to be in this group. And if you're not ready to ride with this group, then you're going to be much better off just kind of defending your position where you are. So now we're starting to see Gagnon. She wants a piece of this. She likes what she sees and thinks she can ride with this group. So Michelle Gagnon going to try and go across, and I think she's going to get into this group.
Yeah, and I think Nyquist has decided not to push and close the gap and to try and go. But it's looking like that group of what was initially 5 is now 8. And, well, they've really come off the pace. And this is an interesting tactic here, Brad, because by no effort of the group behind, the two groups coming together.
Just a little lull in the action in that front group, enough to let the Nyquist group work their way back up. And just like that, they're about to be back in this conversation here. I think Nyquist is the only elite rider left that got caught on the wrong side of this group. See all those yellow jerseys up there. So working to get her way back up there, but it's only a couple seconds. Should be doable here. The problem is she's not getting any help from the other riders in her group.
Well, she's not at all. And is it going to be one of those cases of close enough to touch, but not close enough to stay? And that's looking like what it is at the moment, because the second group now, whilst they were closing it down, the front group have pushed on that small climb. And we said that constantly changing gradient, really instrumental in this course today, because you just don't know what's coming. It's either up or it's down. And the riders pushing on, some of them taking the recovery on the descent, some of them continuing the effort on the descent. We're in with Nyquist at the moment. You can see her on the screen. Great cadence at the moment, and sitting in on the chase group, but 8 seconds back at the moment. The pace has gone out of the front group again. There could well be another opportunity to close this gap down. And the question is Nyquist playing a great game of chess?
I think she's the only rider in this group that has any real desire to catch those riders up the road. The other riders are looking at the front of the women's B category, so I'm not sure there's a ton of motivation among the red jerseys in this group. Look, Nyquist is asking for help. She's like, you guys want to get up to that front group? And they're like, we are the front group. We're the women's B leaders right now. There's no reason to go catch those elite leaders up the road.
Oh, that's it, isn't it? Because Tuma, Briggs, and Bowman's they're 13 seconds clear. So the first 3 riders in Category B, who are the riders with Nyquist, are clear of the chase in their own category. So Nyquist could indeed find herself in a lonely place, but she's only 3 seconds back now. She is indeed closing down on the group, and the group at the moment, well, that for me is one of the reasons why, because they're sat at around 2.6, 2.7 watts per kilo. The pace has come out, and in fact, take a look at that. Nyquist's patience has paid off. Long-term strategy coming into play. Nyquist joins the group, and so does the 3 leaders in the Category B race.
Well, they did a really good job of responding to Nyquist's move. When they saw her going up, they realized that she would be able to drag them up. So very, very good ride from the Category B riders that were able to get themselves back up into this group. And just like that, we add some new names to a group of, well, we'll go ahead and call it 7 leaders in the elites, I think, here. And then our 2 Category Bs with 1 trying to hold on off the back of this group to make it what would be, I think, 11 total in this front group.
Yeah, so we have seen a number of riders dropped off the back of the group. We've seen the group split in 2. We've now got the group come back together again. 6.97 kilometres now into this 28.2 kilometre race. Let's remind ourselves it is 3 laps. Each lap is 9.4 kilometres in length. And on the top right-hand corner of your screen, you can see the gradient that is approaching our riders, or should I say the riders approaching the climb ahead. And that climb is the one across the lake, the bridge across the lake that heads into the city, and it kicks. It's very steep. It kicks just shy of 8%. It could well be instrumental, and if anybody in this group wants to whittle down a few numbers, it could be the place we would be likely to see the next attack.
Oh, my question is not if somebody wants to attack, it's who in this group is going to attack, because there is one coming. Once that road goes uphill, I can almost guarantee that someone will take these guys into zone 6 here. It's just a question of who, because you're looking at a lot of talented riders here very early on in the race. They've made the selection. You're in a good place. Might be a little early to start gambling and taking big risks here, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot of conservative riding from this group early on, but I think there's one, at least one in here who will launch on this next little gradient here.
Well, I loved it to see the little window there into Melissa Aitken's pain cave, utilising items in the garage. specifically to benefit her riding. So those of you who are eagle-eyed, the wheelie bin becoming a table. Excellent. Love it. Well, Aitken, part and parcel of the group, and the group now hitting the climb, and it's Hermansen on the front. So Lisa Hermansen nails her colours to the mast. She's the rider who wants to go today. So Hermansen, Snover, the rider marking the move. Van Hooling very, very quickly on the power. So is Penna and Gallegos. Aitken is there and Columbi. But Hermansen, well, she clearly wants to play today.
And again, this is probably going to be another story of not really the moves going off the front, but who's left after each of these efforts, who gets gapped off, who blows up after you have to launch a 8, 9, 10 watt per kilo effort to try and follow these. So Snover making it, but look at the damage being done behind here. This elastic is about to snap, and if Alexi Snover stays on the power here, there's going to be about a half dozen riders that find themselves on the wrong side of this group.
It's a really long tail to the comet at the moment on the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. I love this graphic when it really starts to heat up because it shows you exactly what is happening to the group. And you can see at the moment one rider off the back, two riders also falling off the back of the group. And it's really starting to become clear that that front group have the possibility of going away from the riders behind. It depends on the transition from the downhill to the slight uphill and then flat. And whether we see another kick from this front group of 6.
Gallegos locked in, another big favorite and big animator in this race. You know, the thing I've noticed about Gallegos, it's one of the boldest riders in this group, a rider that's not afraid to attack, not afraid to make moves. When things are calm, that's when Gallegos shines because that's where she'll lift the tempo seemingly out of nowhere. And I think she may be doing it again here, launching an effort on the front, but then you see she backs off a little bit. What she's doing is testing the legs here, just seeing who's feeling good, who's not feeling so good. If you can find just a little bit of weakness with a really strong rider, like you start noticing maybe Alexi Snover takes a little longer than everyone else to respond, that's the kind of tell that you can keep hitting and get her out of this group and start kind of picking riders off here. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Gallegos get back to the front once she starts sensing that there's a chance to kick some riders out of this group.
And that's it, isn't it? It's the information the racers are looking for as they ride and race. And it may well change and alter their race strategy and tactics that they had at the start. For some riders, it really is clear about executing the plan. For others, it's really about how quick can you respond when you know what's going on around you and how your competition is feeling on the day. Well, Emily Nyquist off the back of the group now. She's on the right-hand side of the screen. She's currently in 11th place. She's 6 seconds down on Melissa Tuma, who is around another 6 or 7 seconds down on Diane Bowmans and Melissa Aitken. We said the group was split and multiple groups now on the road. And Nyquist at the back of the group was Stephanie Briggs. Interesting, this move. So Briggs, part and parcel of the women's B category, just going past Nyquist. Nyquist, you saw, just lifted her power there just to drop into the draft of Briggs and ensure that she stays with her.
This is another scenario where Nyquist's fate is really in the hands of this front group. It's going to be up to the Hermansen, Snover, Columbi group as to how hard they ride. That will dictate whether Briggs has a chance to get across here because she can only do so much wattage. She's doing everything she can right now, trying to work with a Nyquist here just in front of her. But really, it's up to that front group and the tempo that they set, the power that they do. That'll determine whether these two riders even have a shot of making it into the front group. And I would say right now, they've got a shot because it was a relatively calm-looking group on the front. But just as I say that, Alexi Snover takes them into zone 6 here.
Well, she does indeed. On the left-hand side of your screen, the animation is happening in the front group. On the right-hand side, just before we dropped out, Briggs was dropping the emojis down to Nyquist and telling her she was too tired to work. Interesting. Whether she was bluffing or not is another matter. But Hermansen, Snover, Columbi, Gagnon, Van Hooling, Gallegos and Aitken aren't bluffing. They are well and truly at the front of this race. Now, interestingly, you can see behind them the two red jerseys. That's first and second in the women's B race, and they are still in really close contention, Brad.
Got to give them some credit for hanging with this group for 16 and a half minutes of racing, 11K done with the front group. Super impressive for a Category B rider to hang with the front elite group for that long, especially on this course with so many ups and downs and these sort of undulating terrain. So a lot of credit to our Category B riders hanging with the elites here, but it looks like we are down to an all yellow jersey front group now.
It does, doesn't it? And 7 riders, I think, in this front group, and well and truly clear now of the rest of the elite race field. They are indeed 12 seconds clear of the leading rider in that Category B race, Diane Bowmans, who is on the right-hand side of your screen. Stephanie Briggs is there as well, and Melissa Toomey is... so, hold on, let me make this clear. Bowmans in 1, Tuma in 2, 13 seconds back. Briggs in 3, a further 9 seconds back. So that women's Category B race is not over yet, but Diane Bowmans is tapping away a nice, steady rhythm now, and currently lying in 9th place overall. So 8 riders in the leading group, and that leading group made up completely of our women's elite race field.
Thoroughly impressed with Diane Bowmans today. We'll keep an eye on her as we go back to the front group. Another truce right here, a very rare lull in the action. You see these guys just averaging 2-3 watts per kilo. That's an easy day at the office for these 8 riders here, but that won't last long. This usually lasts maybe a couple minutes where you get a chance to relax, but somebody in this group, and there's a increasingly standard list of names that tend to lift the tempo here. Snover is starting to ride her way onto that list for me, being one of the more aggressive riders that has made it into this group. She's lifted the tempo a few times already. I would put Hermansen on that list as well, a rider who's not afraid to lift the tempo when things get a little too easy for her. You know, they say the best time to go is not when you're feeling good, it's when everyone else is feeling bad, and that probably means that you're feeling that way too, but you got to find those opportunities to attack and make the moves.
Well, I'll tell you something. Liz Van Hooling for me is a rider who I think really wants a win, and I wouldn't discount her at all today. She's pushing on the power at the moment. The gradient has started to go up. They're on a long, steady climb at the moment on the course. Columbia at the front of the pack now. Never a surprise to see Celine Columbia at the front of the pack on the climb. That was really where she made all the action last week when she took the win. But Snover, Aitken, Hooling, Hermansen, Gagnon, and Penner. Gallegos is there as well at the moment. At least Gallegos pretty much just watching the back of the group and really doing a good job of staying there.
Well, now waiting again for the tempo to lift. The difference here, the average has lifted. They're up to about a 4 watt per kilo average now. So the overall power required just to stay with this group is lifting. The easier efforts are getting harder, and the harder efforts are getting higher and higher up there. So now just the average to stay with the group lifting. Look at Alexi Snover having to go into zone 4 here just to stay with the group as Columbia lifts the tempo on the front. So I don't think you see any more easy rides. Those 2 and 3 watt per kilo times are over, and now you're going to have to stick at 4 or 5 watts per kilo just to stay in this group.
Well, let's not discount the fact that also absolute power in terms of those watts also instrumental in terms of how this race plays out when it is flatter, and there are some downhill and flatter sections, and watts per kilo versus absolute power, always a really interesting dynamic on virtual cycling. Just one rider getting distance a little bit from the back of the group, a little bit of a stretch at the moment. So it is Gagnon at the moment. We can see the Canadian rider just getting distance, and it's interesting, isn't it, because this up down nature of the on-off power. Gagnon not happy with that lifting and dropping of pace.
You got to remember, she's already survived about 20 of those lifts and drops. It was the 21st one that got her as she gets gapped off the back here. But as we've learned in these groups, it's really up to that front group. So Gagnon not out of this one yet. She can absolutely get back on. She's shown that she has the power to ride with this front group. So would not be surprised to see Michelle back in the conversation here in the next 30 seconds or so, unless someone launches a big attack. The good news for Gagnon here is looking at the elevation profile. There's one more little kick coming up right here, and then she's got a nice flat section after that, which is a perfect place to chase back on.
And the tactic and the strategy should well be to hold a consistent pace rather than necessarily respond. The group on the front really kicking hard. I saw Snova and Van Hooling, Penna and Gallegos really kick steeply there, but very shortly I imagine they're going to be back off the pace and onto the downhill section. They are pretty much halfway, just over halfway into the race now at the the 14.5 kilometre marker. There we are, in with Michelle Gagnon on the screen. You can see that concentration on her face. She's got a task ahead of her, and the task is to try and come back to the group. I hope she does, but the pace again picking up on the front. And now that's interesting because it is a very small climb, just a tiny ramp on the road before there's a long, slow descent into the bridge that is the final climb on the lap, and it'll mean at the end of lap 2, the beginning of lap 3.
Gagnon with a smile on her face as she goes to work to try to come across that gap. She knows exactly what she needs to do, and she is putting in the first steps to do it, trying to bring herself back up to this group right here, which is once again taking a little lull here. Good opportunity to grab just a couple seconds for Gagnon to get back up into this group, holding on to an 8-second lead. All things considered, that's pretty good for Michelle Gagnon, especially considering that they just went up and over a little elevation here. To hold that to 8 seconds tells me it's still doable here, but again, it's up to that front group. If they keep doing this at 3 watts per kilo, Gagnon should be able to get in there in about 3 or 4 minutes. But if they go back up to 4, 5, 6 watts per kilo, that's a problem for Michelle here.
Well, I think the interesting story behind Michelle is the fact that Diane Bowmans, who is leading the category B race, has been caught by Melissa Toomey, who was in second last time we were in with them, and Emily Nyquist, who was separated as well. There were 3 single riders last time we were in with them. They're now all together as a group of 3. Stephanie Briggs is around 10 seconds back. She'll be lying third in that women's B race. Now, we did allude to the fact that Bowman's lead may not have been established, the distance and the gap not strong enough to hold out. And well, it really is all change back in this women's B race. So Tuma and Bowman's, the 2 riders in red, first and second in the category B race. Stephanie Briggs, 12 seconds back. She'll just be coming round that corner. The eagle-eyed amongst you can spot her in third place. But Bowman's now caught from Tuma and Nyquist, who's in there in the yellow women's elite category.
This is awesome. Going to get a really good finish out of 2 groups on the road here today, as it looks like our women's B group starting to come together at the front of their competition, as Stephanie Briggs now has her work cut out for her to try and bring back a 12-second gap to get up to Bowman's and Tuma, the 2 leaders in the women's category B. So 2 really great races unfolding here. The selection has been made in the elites. You're looking at the front group on your screen right here. And then meanwhile, the women's B leaders linking up behind them, coming together to sort out their finale coming up in about 12K from now, we'll call it, for this front group. But now we just wait for the next attack to come out of our women's elite leaders.
Yeah, so the 7 riders rolling in the front group here, about to come into and across the water on the bridge, the final kicker on the lap. This is the end of lap 2, going out onto the beginning of lap 3, and they're a steady state at the moment. So Penna Van Hooling, Aitken, Gagnon, and I'm looking at the list and it's continually rotating and changing, which tells me they are all nice and steady in their pace and all very even. No one is putting in a push, no one is laying off the pace. They are all rolling through the group. Gallegos is there, Aitken is there. Elise Gallegos for me is one of the riders here. Very, very happy just to monitor the back of the group. It's an interesting tactic, Brad.
I would say it's a departure from the racing that we've seen for a lot of riders in this group. It's been very rare that we see a group riding together for this long. Typically, it's only a couple minutes before somebody will decide that they want to break the rhythm here. But this group looking pretty happy, pretty comfortable right now. And to me, that just means we're in for an even more exciting finale here once they start lifting that tempo. There's going to be a lot of fresh legs that go at it into the closing kilometers here.
Oh, It could be an absolutely cracker of a final lap. And let's remember, this is the end of lap 2. We're about to go out onto lap 3, but Gallegos, Van Hooling, Aitken and Columbia are on our screens. And take a look at the face of Celine Columbia at the moment. That is one committed rider, and Van Hooling's eyes glued to the screen. She really wants to follow the moves and see what's going on. But Alexei Snova at the front of the group. Now, that's a name we keep calling at the moment, Brad. She really is instrumental in making the moves here on this women's elite race on the Echelon Racing League today. So Snova at the front, Hermansen doing the chasing, Gallegos and Van Hooling moving into close attention. Columbia is there, Penna and Aitken. Gagnon now 5 seconds back off the group. That climb has broken the gap, and Gagnon, well, she needs to throw a rope around the back wheel of Aitken and Gallegos to get a toe back on at the moment, but I think this group could well be moving away from her.
The problem is they are continuing the effort on the front, even on this downhill section here. Celine Colombi keeping it at 5 watts per kilo. So what was a recovery section on the last lap where the riders were kind of relaxing up and over has now changed to an attacking section here. And I think that's going to be just a little too much to overcome for the riders trying to chase back onto this group. But the ones that were in it looks like have all survived that onslaught up and over the bridge here, as now things come back together, and Michelle Gagnon right back to work in the wattage mines.
Oh, she is indeed, and she's holding that steady pace. She's doing a great job. She'll be able to see the group, and she's not responding to them. She's setting her own pace. Now, I don't know why I'm ever surprised at Alexei Snova. You know, she was 13th in the World Championships in October this year. She is a class rider, but she really is being dominant today in this group. Columbi now coming to the fore again. Maybe this is Columbi's move, because the gradient, well, it pretty much is the only flat section on the course at the moment, and Columbia is dialing it.
I think Columbia may be preloading this attack, seeing that there are some hills coming up, and she's going to give herself a little bit of breathing room ahead of them to see if she can widen this gap. She's putting the crack in the foundation now, and she's going to come back with the jackhammer to finish the job once this road goes uphill. So Columbia on the attack, putting some riders on notice. But look at this. Everyone has been able to respond. They all closed it down. And more importantly, nobody got gapped off the back, right? It wasn't an up and down effort for these riders. They all had no problem recovering to it. So to me, Columbia just asked a question, then they all answered that they're doing just fine.
Oh, it did indeed. And 7 riders going out in the leading group onto the final lap. The first main climb is coming, and you can see Aitken, Hermansen, Gallegos, Snova, Columbi, Penna and Van Hooling all responding to each other. Nobody able to break away at the moment. This really has been about having eagle eyes and being able to see like an owl 360 degrees around the pack, because it's continually changing gradient and different riders here attacking in the group. Hermansen on your screen at the moment, you can see her just out of the saddle tapping on those pedals, comfortable in this group as they start the climb.
Well, now you're getting into the territory where this front group has to start thinking about how they can win this bike race out of this group, and start thinking about, how you're going to take it to the group. This is no longer the time to play defense here. This is where you have to start writing the playbook and figuring out how you're going to play these last kilometers. A lot of that will be using the information that you got earlier, right? We know Celine Columbia is going to attack on the climbs. We know she likes when that road goes uphill. So maybe don't challenge her there. Look at other names like Liz Van Hooling. We know she can cover just about any move given enough time. She can follow those gaps. So you don't want to go too early to the point where Van Hooling will be able to chase and follow you. There are a lot of different ways to play this one out. Maybe they all just stay together and we're treated to an 8-up sprint to the line. We're going to find out in about 8 kilometers from now.
We are indeed. And Penna just pushing on those pedals and squeezing back into the group. But that is one of the main climbs on the course. It's done for the final time. The group are all still together. They hit the descent now. They will drop down into the valley, and then there's a short, sharp kicker before they get over the climbing at the moment. And there is spite in the group as they are content to continue to roll. Penna, Gallegos, Columbi, Aitken. It's Melissa Aitken on the front of the group as they kick again. This is the small kicker at the moment, but nobody, I think, is going to get damaged or kicked out the back of the group at the moment. I think what they are proving today, Brad, is that they are really well matched on this course, all 7 of them.
It's going to be an awesome finale in the elite women's race. If they haven't been able to split this group up yet, I don't know that it's going to happen before the end. So we are locking in for an exceptional finale to week 5 here with our elite women's group that has found these 7 riders together in the front group, and they just cannot get rid of each other. Selena Colombi going to try now as she gets out to the front of the group. But remember, she's still got 7K to go. Gallegos responds, but Colombi wants to get this gap early. It's very clear that's her racing style. She doesn't want this one to come down to a sprint. She thinks she can do it with raw power from a long way out, but Elise Gallegos has something to say about that.
Well, she's coming into another long and steady climb, and you can see that on the top right-hand corner, there's a bit of a descent at the moment before that climb starts. So Columbia on the front, and she's not backing off the power this time, but Gallegos and Van Hooling, Hermansen and Penner, they will be watching her. They will know that the climbs are where Columbia is going to push. They raced with her last week. They saw exactly where she attacked. They'll have raced with her before. They will know her strengths. And that really is it, isn't it, Brad? Because these riders have been racing together on the Echelon Racing League now since the beginning of December. They really have worked out the strengths and weaknesses of each other. And it's going to play into the tactics on the final kilometres of this course today.
Last little slow rise here, 3.5% gradient. Nobody attacking yet. They're just all lifting the tempo to go up here. We're looking for that separation, but this one may stay together. I would not be surprised to see all these riders sprinting to the line together. If you're going to go, you've got to go all in, and it's an all or nothing move, right? If you're Celine Colombi making these moves, you're either going to win this race solo or probably end up 7th place on the day because there's not a whole lot of middle ground. If you make a solo move, you got to go all in. If it doesn't work out, you're not going to have anything left at the finish. So it's going to take a rider that's willing to bet it all on their legs. And I think that's going to be Selena Colombi out of this group. She thinks she can solo this one, just do it with raw power, get away and stay away. If it works out, it'll be a spectacular ride. But if not, there are a lot of hungry riders sitting right behind her.
Well, that's it, isn't it? The thing here really is who's here for the win, who's here for the points, because some of these riders will want the consistent points in that league to finish on the podium for the league. They may be less interested in the overall win today, so everybody could well have a different agenda, but Columbia at the moment really pushing on there, and she's backed off the power now. Penner has come up to her back wheel, so is Aitken, Van Hooling. Gallegos is there, Hermansen is there. Snova is at the back of the group. The entire group of 7 women leading this race today on the Echelon Racing League round 5. Well, at the 23-kilometre mark, they're 5.2k out from the finish, and they are all still together.
Columbia going to try and go again. Last week's winner. Worst case scenario for her as she takes this group to the line. She obviously doesn't like her chances sprinting against these names, but Columbia going to try and go again. She just came back from another attack that Liz Van Hooling was able to close down and bridge back up. And once again, they're going to keep Columbia in the group here. Hermansen, Aitken, and Van Hooling won't let her go.
I'll tell you something, when Celine Colombi goes, it's like a team time trial formation behind, but nobody else taking their turn, just leaving Colombi out there on the front. So eyes all on Colombi at the moment. That's where the expectation is from these riders, from the attacks. They are marking each other. No one is fully committed yet.
Gallegos sitting at the back. She's been relatively quiet for her riding style. Wouldn't be surprised to see one come from her. I think she's another rider who has the legs. She has the potential. Her best chance statistically is going to be an attack here. She doesn't want to sprint to the line here. I think Gallegos has the power to get away here and stay away if she chooses to go that route. But if the action stays the way it is, she's not going to have a ton of opportunities to get away and may end up sprinting against these other 6 here.
Well, if this does come down to a sprint, I think this is Hermansen versus Van Hooling, and it's who gets the timing right on this course. Snova, Columbi, Aitken, Gallegos, and Penner, for me, are the ones to watch in terms of wanting to get away. That's a bold statement. Who knows what's going to happen, but it's going to happen very, very quickly. There's 4 kilometers to go, and on the top right-hand corner of your screen, you can see that final climb coming. It's a long, steady downhill run now until they cross that water on the bridge. And then the finish, well, that's around 300 meters from the base of the descent of that climb on the other side.
Everybody in this front group on edge. It's like waiting for the last card to get flipped in Texas Hold'em. You're looking to see if you're going to have that magic scenario out there today to try to get a win as they go inside the last 3 kilometers here all together. We've seen big attacks coming from Colombia that have come back, but she's got one more in the tank. I can almost guarantee you'll see the Italian try one more time to get away from this group so that she doesn't have to go against some of the best sprinters in the game here.
Well, just as a mention, Tuma, Bowmans, and Nyquist, that group of 3 still together. Bowmans we had and Tuma both leading. So the 2 riders 1 and 2 in that women's B race. Nyquist with them as well. That group of 3 seeming to work very well together at the moment. They're at the 23.6 kilometer marker. They are around 1.3 kilometers behind the leading group on the left-hand side of your screen, but that doesn't matter because for Tuma and Bowmans, this is the race that counts. They are 1 and 2 in that women's B race, Brad.
And they're racing. A lot of back and forth back in that women's B group. Meanwhile, you called it the team time trial over on the left-hand side of our screen. Those riders not only riding together, but the game is putting them almost in a perfect line because they're all riding so consistently with each other. It thinks that these riders are trying to ride in a pace line because they're just so intent and so closely watching each other in that group. Meanwhile, Bowmans and Tuma back and forth, trading leads, gaps opening up. It's really turning into a great battle back there for the women's B race.
It is the B race on the right-hand side of your screen, the elite race on the left-hand side of your screen, and it's not going to be long before the touch paper has got to be lit in this elite women's race, Brad, because they have not got much further to go.
Well, if it doesn't come in the next kilometer, it ain't coming. You're not getting away from this group if you don't go soon here. So they are rapidly running out of time to get rid of the sprint scenario here. And again, there's a few very good sprint names in this group. So if you want to get rid of them, you've got to do it now.
Well, I'll tell you something. If you were doing a team time trial at the moment, that's the photo you'd want.
It looks like there's only 4 riders left in this group, but they're
I
all
know.
just compactly set in there.
They are so tightly matched, this group. And you can see that as the avatars are on the screen because they are just riding as a group, looking at each other, just wondering what is going through each other's minds at the moment because they're at 26 kilometers. There's 2.2 kilometers to go. There's one big climb coming. It's short, but it's steep. And I think they're thinking, who's going or is it going to be me?
Meanwhile, Michelle Gagnon sitting solo in her effort. She's been caught in the gap, but doing a good job of just staying there, maintaining a 34-second gap back from that group, which all things considered is pretty good on a day like today. To get dropped by this front group of 7 with the names and power that are in there and hold that as a solo effort to 34 seconds today, it's a great ride from Michelle Gagnon. So she's got a lot to be proud of with the 8th place ride that she's on today. Meanwhile, still waiting for the attacks on the left-hand side of your screen. I'm really surprised that one hasn't come out of this group yet, but I think they're just so evenly matched. Here goes Colombia. That's the attack that we've been waiting for. So now the other riders have to respond, and if they do, this one comes down to a sprint today. Colombia on her last-ditch effort to try to get away.
Oh, she is indeed. And Colombia's push, but Van Hooling and Penna, Gallegos, Snova, Aitken and Hermansen are all matching her. Coming into the base of the climb, Colombia pushed before that climb went upwards. Can she maintain that power? Look at them. They're wide across the road. They are so well matched, the group. The rider in the most trouble at the moment is Melissa Aitken, but she's just at 1 second. The group are continuing. They are at the top of the climb. The gradient is going to give some respite very, very quickly. What do they do here with 1.2k to go? Does Snova and Van Hooling continue the charge? Does Colombia keep going or Hermansen? There's a small gap.
A little bit of daylight up and over the climb. Back to Hermansen, Penner, and Gallegos getting gapped off here as Columbia stays on the front. Now, this will be her trademark, staying on the power on the way up and over the climb. She's attacking on the way down, holding on to a small gap here, but Snover, Van Hooling, and Hermansen still there. Penner, I think, is going to be in the conversation as well. But as this one goes up to 3 seconds for Aiken, 5 seconds for Gallegos, that's going to be it for them. I don't know if they'll come back from this one today as we go inside the last 500 meters here. They've got their work cut out for them. Meanwhile, here goes Snover to the front. Big effort to the line for Alexi Snover now.
Oh, Snover's absolutely kicking it here because she's only got 500 metres to go. So Snover goes long. Van Hooling's on her wheel. So is Colombian, Hermansen, Tiffany, Penner, Aitken and Gallegos are out of this now. Unless there's something absolutely phenomenal they can do, because Alexi Snover is dialing it on the front here. Can she hold this? Can Van Hooling come? Van Hooling's just kicked at 10 watts per kilo. Can Liz Van Hooling make this a win today? It's going to be her first in the Echelon Racing League if she can. But she's coming up onto Snover's wheel. That's the banner. Can she do it, or is Snover going to come over the line first? Van Hooling and Snover are neck and neck. It's going to be Snover. It's going to be Van Hooling. It's going to be Van Hooling. Wow, what a race. Liz Van Hooling.
Finish into week 5, and Liz Van Hooling makes the catch and pass on Alexi Snover in the last 10 meters. Liz Van Hooling, the queen of bridging, does it again today and holds on for a win.
That was phenomenal sprinting from Van Hooling and Snover. Masterclass in getting your timing right and not backing off till you are over the line.
And you got to give Alexi Snover some credit on that move as well. She was the spark that started that wildfire of a sprint in the finale today. So big ups to Alexi Snover, going to end up second place on the day, just barely getting beat by Van Hooling on the line. And got to give Michelle Gagnon some credit as well. You talk about a consistent ride on a hard day. Gagnon going to hold this one to about 20 seconds, we'll call it, up to those lead riders. That's a great day at the office. Good on you, Michelle Gagnon. Great ride today in the ERL.
Yeah, she has indeed put in a really strong, consistent ride since she got dropped from the group. Emily Nyquist now looking like she's ridden clear of Bowmans and Tuma, the two Category B riders. So Nyquist on the right-hand side of your screen, looking to me like she's going to come over the line in 9th place today. The race is on, though, between Bowmans and Tuma in this Category B race, Brad.
Diane Bowman's going to get to the line here, taking Melissa Tuma, the Canadian versus the American, wrapping up the women's Category B race on the left-hand side of your screen. I think Bowman's got there, so that'll be our women's Category B winner if Tuma holds on here, although here comes Tuma over the top of Bowman's.
Yeah, she does indeed. Melissa Tooman just coming over the top. Diana Bowman's just pushing on to the wheel. They've got, I think, around 250 meters until they get to the line.
Here's your women's Category B sprint into the finish here. Tuma versus Bowman's going to go head-to-head. Tuma will be first to open it up from position number 1. Bowman's trying to use that draft in the second spot. Here she comes, making the move. Bowman's and Tuma going to go to the line together. That'll be a photo finish, and I think we're going to have to wait for confirmation here, but it looks like they're going to give it to Tuma on the line.
I'll tell you, 0.02 of a second on my screen between those two. And sometimes, Brad, I think there's a real benefit to virtual cycling when you're sat in the commentary box.
We certainly get a unique view, being able to watch all the different screens. I love all the different angles that we get here on MyWhoosh. It really is a pleasure to watch each week. Here's Stephanie Briggs soloing her way in. Stephanie had a great ride as well solo here. She's going to end up behind that Nyquist group, but held off a very strong group with names like Kristen Hull and Linda McHugh in it. So Briggs on her way in to wrap up another good day in the Echelon Racing League.
Yeah, she's going to come across the line and take 3rd place today. So a podium spot for Stephanie Briggs, our stage 5 of the Echelon Racing League.
Well, turned into an exciting finish on the line. Look at that. 0.115 seconds between Snover and Van Hooling. Another close finish in the Echelon Racing League. As we look forward to our finale of the league next week, and then obviously the national championships coming up after that. But this finale, maybe one of the best races of the year coming up here, especially in this elite women's field. I think that's going to be the best one to watch. The elite men have a dominant leader in Hayden Pucker, but this elite women's race is going to be wide open headed into the championships next week.
I tell you, 5 stages, 4 different women on the number 1 step in this elite women's race on the Echelon Racing League. It is so exciting. Can't wait till next week.
Well, that's going to do it for us this week in week number 5. We'll see you back next weekend for the Echelon Racing League Championships. For my partner, Emma Martin, my name is Brad Soner, saying thanks for watching, and we'll see you back next week for the finale.